This week we made a cat condo for Murder Cloud.
Plus, we launched our new channel.
Yep, welcome to Season 2.
It's time for a make or break.
Hey guys, I'm Rob.
And I'm Sarah. Welcome to Make or Break Season 2.
That's right, as you can see, after spending our first season on belts and boxes, we've moved to our very own channel where we can focus on maker stuff and DIY.
Yep, you'll still find this show here every week. It's just moved to Fridays instead of Saturday.
Yep, and you'll also find Sarah's Top 5 DIY in our new show, Meet a Maker, both of which will rotate on Tuesdays.
We also have several more surprises coming up, but for now, let's go to this week's project.
The true owner of our property, Murder Cloud, was born here, and he does a great job of keeping pests away.
But the poor guy had to live in this box when it gets really, really cold. So we decided to make him an insulated condo that will be on the back deck and easily heated if necessary.
Here's how it went.
This is Murder Cloud. He's an adorable, affectionate, cuddly ball of death. He was born here on the property, so he kind of came with the house. But living outside means he's out in the bitter cold at times. He has this tiny house way out in the yard, but we thought we could build him something nicer on the deck where we can check in on him and even provide some heat if it gets too cold. So I designed this. Looks simple enough, right? I thought so. Figured this wouldn't take any time at all. I was super wrong. It took forever. First things first though, Sarah and I got all the lumber we'd need, including a bunch of 2x2 furring strips. These were not in really good shape, but we figured at $2 a piece, they'd work fine. But as soon as we got them into the shop, I realized that not only were they warped like crazy, but they were also covered in tiny bugs. So instead of buying more, I knew I had some extra 2x4s and decided to cut them down to 2x2s myself. This is actually pretty easy with a table saw. You first cut off about 1/4 inch to get rid of the rounded edge, then adjust your saw to 1.5 inches and run it through twice, giving you, well, two 2x2s. Next, we cut all of our 2x2s down to size, and the supports for the roof had to be cut at 15 degrees to match the pitch I wanted for the roof. I cut the siding to size as well. We decided to use T111 with 4-inch slots just to make it look nicer. And here's a quick fun fact. 4-inch T111 and 8-inch T111, which is what I designed my model with, are different thicknesses. That's important if you change your mind mid-project and don't go back to adjust your cut list. This bites me a little bit later, but you'll see. After those were done, I ripped some more 2x4s down to actual 1-inch by 1-inch pieces for the railing. When I finally had all of my pieces cut, it was time to do some painting. I started with flooring. We cut those out of some OSB. I used Thompson's water seal as I wanted to keep the natural color of the wood. I used the same sealer on the siding as well, and it looked really good. Then I started painting all of my trim and railing black. There was a lot of it. This was when I realized how big of a project this is. There are so many pieces. When it all dried, I started the assembly. After dropping in the first floor, it finally started taking shape. The whole point of this little cat condo was to give Murder Cloud an insulated home that would keep his heat in, so the first floor would have a door and the second floor would be sealed up except for an opening in the floor for him to get in. For now, I plan to leave the door and second floor window open until Murder gets used to it. I also built a dual pane plexiglass window for the second floor that I'll install once it gets colder. I used my jigsaw to cut out the opening in the second floor so he could jump in and hopefully keep the heat inside. To attach the floor, I simply put down a layer of glue and then held them in place with brad nails until they dried. Sarah had an extra set of feet from her dog bowl stand and they worked great. I didn't want to use OSB for the top floor since you'd see it, so for that I used some 3/4 inch plywood. I also used it for the roof. Sarah helped me get these panels cut out. I framed out the window opening for the second floor. Again, plan to add a plexiglass window when it gets colder. Next, I moved on to insulation. I bought both 1-inch and 1/2-inch foam insulation. I'm going to monitor the temperature inside this thing as things get colder, and if it doesn't stay warm enough, I can easily add another 1/2 inch of insulation. I put 1 inch under each of the floors to start. I used this adhesive specifically for foam board, as the guy at the big box store recommended, but it didn't hold. A quick Google search suggested I use Titebond wood glue, which I have a ton of, and it worked great. It was finally time to start putting on the siding. These I glued on and nailed into place. After each panel went on, I cut out insulation and glued it in. Next, I glued up the railings. These are not going to be under a lot of stress and are mostly decorative, so I just glued them up and clamped them all together to let them dry. Alright, back to the siding. I drilled a hole where the window would be and then used a flush trim bit in my router to cut it out. Man, using that bit is always so gratifying. Next, I assembled the railing and roof support on the top piece. I decided to keep this whole piece separate so I could lift the entire thing off to get to the second floor to replace straw. Then it was time to put on the trim. Remember how earlier I switched to T111 with 4-inch slots? Yeah, this is where it bit me. Fortunately, that just meant all my trim was too long, so I could just cut it down to size. Now the trim was installed, I moved on to the door. I marked it off, drilled a pilot hole, and then tried to cut it out with my jigsaw, only to realize the trim wouldn't let me get the jigsaw where I needed it. So I switched to my router and did my best to keep my cut straight. Eventually, when I install a door, this will be covered with trim anyways. Next, I finished the top piece by painting the edges black, and I used Thompson's Weather Seal again on the rest of it. Finally, I screwed on the roof and then layered on some spare shingles we had laying around. I didn't have any nails, so I used screws really carefully, and I trimmed it with a jigsaw. Every video I watched told me to trim the shingles with a knife, but that was leaving a less than perfect edge, while the jigsaw not only cut straight, but the friction melted the layers together and it looked really good. I'm pretty sure I ruined the blade, but I've got more. The condo was finally ready to go outside. Did you know there's a difference between hay and straw? Because I didn't. But your cat needs straw, so that's what I got. I put a good layer of the stuff on both floors, put the top on, and waited to see if Murder Cloud would ever go near it. I'll tell you what, he was hesitant at first, but thanks to a few strategically placed treats, he eventually wandered in to explore. He even worked his way up to the second floor. We put his food out on the deck, and he really seemed to like his new perch. As it gets colder and Murder Cloud gets more comfortable with it, I'll eventually add that door and window, and if we need to, the whole thing sits right in front of an outdoor outlet, so I can easily add a heated pad for those really cold days. I gotta tell you guys, this project took way longer than I expected, but boy was it worth it.
All right, I am excited to announce that Murder Cloud has finally warmed up to his new home.
Just to be safe, we're not gonna destroy the old one until he's like clearly moved on, right?
Yes, until he's happy. All right. Okay, now at this point in our show, we used to sneak in a quick interview with other makers you'll find here on YouTube and Instagram, but we had figured that they were being hidden in each show and decided they needed a show of their own.
Starting in just 2 weeks, we'll be launching Meet a Maker, a show dedicated to short, engaging interviews with some of our very favorite makers. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss one.
Now, Sarah and I love to share our favorite maker videos each week. Do you want to go first?
Sure. This week I picked Paul Jackman's hilarious giant articulated hands. He got a new X-Carve, which Rob still won't buy me, and the first thing that he built were these huge wooden hands and promptly used them to go trick-or-treating.
And this week I picked a new video from Matthias, who was tired of blowing leaves around like a mere mortal, and instead built his own leaf blower using an old 1-horsepower electric motor. The results are awesome, but easily the best part is watching Matthias' face each time he tests it out. This guy is a happy maker.
We have a huge problem on our new channel.
What's that?
As of this moment, we are subscribed to exactly 0 channels.
Okay, that's a tragedy.
It is, but I think you guys can actually help us out. We would like every one of you to head down to the comments and mention as many maker channels as you'd like. Anyone you love to watch make things, and we'll subscribe to them today.
Hey, did you know that last week Sarah and I built this crazy dog bowl stand? Well, you can watch it right here. Special thanks to Heart for sponsoring season 2 and reminding us that we can build anything we can imagine if we do it with heart. All right, guys, break's over.
Let's make something.